All right, we're getting an early start. Welcome in Section 1904. It is a Tuesday. It is the 8th day of April for 2025. I have to say thank you very much to John G. for being available early to me today since I have to run out to SDFC training. I have a couple of interviews lined up. One for the midweek show and then another one coming up for the pregame show this weekend when SDFC travels to Colorado, Denver, Colorado, to take on the Colorado Rapids. Looking forward to that, but we'll be interviewing a hometown player, Milan Olaski, and also Anibal Godoy. Looking forward to that. That's your favorite player, right, John?
Anibal Godoy is my favorite player to watch this season. If you would have shown me the SDFC roster and said, pick which one of these names originated from San Diego, grew up in San Diego, Milan Olaski is probably one of the last ones that I would have picked. I looked up where the Colorado Stadium was because I was like, I wonder if it's like right there downtown by like the Rocky Stadium or maybe over by what I still call Mile High. And it's funny because like I looked it up and it's just in the big expanse between the airport and the city. Like every time you land in Denver Airport and you have to go to Denver, it's like, God, it takes like 40 minutes of driving to get there. It's like, there's never anything out there. Now there's a stadium there. Good for them.
Well, yeah, and it's, it's very funny. This has not been rehearsed, by the way, but just to follow up on your point, because sure. I'm doing not only the pre and the half and the post this week, I'm actually doing the color commentary with Adrian.
Yay.
Yeah, because Warren Barton is on Apple TV Plus duty. So I was just looking this up. It's Dick's Sporting Good. I happen to have this right in front of me here on my desk. So this is not off the top of my head.
Wonderful.
But I started doing my prep work on Monday night. Dick's Sporting Goods Park, John, as you know. Commerce City, Colorado.
I saw Commerce City.
It's been open since 2007. It has a capacity of 19,680. And just because I put it into my Apple Maps, it is 10 miles from the area of downtown Denver called Lodo, lower downtown.
Yeah.
10 miles from Lodo. So yeah, I just happened to look this all up. You and I are on the same page that you happen to be checking that out to see where their stadium is. Yes, Dick's Sporting Good Park. That's where it will be. 6:30 is kickoff, so pregame will be at 6 o'clock coming up this weekend. And for those that are truly curious, just because I'll probably recycle this a time or two, an elevation of 5,164 feet in Commerce City, Colorado, in case you were curious about that.
So that is still a mile high, right?
I believe so. Well, what is a mile? 5,000. I think it's a little less. It's just
5180. I don't know. It's the thing they always have on their jerseys in the court for the Nuggets. I think it's 5180.
Yeah, probably an easy thing to look up, and we might have known that 30 years ago when we were in school. But yeah, it's right there. I mean, it's right there. And if you're truly curious about who scored the first ever goal at Dick's Sporting Good Park, it was none other than Herculez Gomez. So there you go.
Hey, that's a fan favorite. I did want to say, because you rattled off very quickly after you said Dick's Sporting Good Park, that it holds about 19,000 people. So when you're comparing Snapdragon to Dick's, size apparently does matter, and Snapdragon wins. We have a lot more people in the stands.
By the way, why don't we compare Dick's to Sutter Health Park? I was watching the Padres and the A's last night, and I was like looking around going, how many people are at Sutter? This is where the A's are playing, by the way, for those that might not know, in Sacramento.
Yeah.
Sutter Health Park, 9,502 was the announced attendance Monday night in Sacramento, California. It's a facility that holds 12,119. So I
say it was 5,000?
What's that?
Did you say there was 5,000 people there?
9,502. 9,502.
And a lot of them were Padres fans.
Correct.
You could hear them, especially in the 7th, 8th, and 9th innings. There was some really loud "Let's go Padres" chants. The part of the ballpark that I was most enamored with, I had not watched a game here. I'm pretty sure the Sacramento River Cats are also playing games here.
I think so.
Which is
that's
really
right.
I wonder if they're doing like the old Clippers-Lakers Forum thing where like the minor league team plays in the afternoon and then the big league team plays at night. But I loved all the shots of the outfield because there was like almost nothing out there, right? Like Tatis hit a ball over a building, and then the next inning Rooker hit a ball over a building in right field where Tatis was in left field. But down the right field line, there was just a big grass field. Like, it felt very spring training. There was a big grass field behind a chain link fence. And then just people like sitting on the grass watching the Padres take on the A's. I also, Don and Mud, they weren't drunk. I know they weren't drunk. But they were having so much fun that sometimes it sounded like they were drunk. Like, the amount of times that they called them the Oakland A's and then tried to correct themselves by, like, yelling Sacramento. There was some sort of game they were playing with the word hundo, where anytime anything happened that had anything to do with 100 pitches, 100 miles an hour, they would say hundo very loudly. They were having a ball. Everyone was having a ball. It's a good game. It's a fun game. Close game.
Yeah, I think 5-4 final.
Yeah, that sounds right.
5-4, the final. Padres, as we woke up today, the best record in Major League Baseball. Even though we distinctly said yesterday it's time to stop looking at the record.
Our first place Padres.
Want that as a bit of a footnote to get it going here today. So Anibal Godoy is your favorite player. What would you like me to ask Anibal Godoy? I have a couple of questions jotted down here, and I do think that there's actually something I'm heading out there. Probably will interview him at about 12 noon. What time is it currently? It's like 9:35.
Yeah.
So I have a little time to think about this. He had himself quite a week last week. Not only did he score, he scored the first goal of the match. No, I'm sorry, second goal of the match.
Second.
Talked a little bit about it yesterday, and we spoke about how infrequently he scores, which isn't a knock. It is actually a credit to him that he's such a good player that he plays so many minutes, even though he's not counted on to be putting the ball in the back of the net. But, that's a pretty good week to pick up 3 points at home, to score a goal. I don't know if you saw this. If you he is your favorite player, so you probably did. But he also, John, on his Instagram post, became a U.S. citizen last week. Now, Anibal Godoy, for those that don't know or those that haven't followed SDFC, he's a midfielder. He's Panamanian. He just recently was playing for the Panamanian national team in the Nations League tournament up in Los Angeles. He's been a captain for the Panamanian national team for years. He's like the emotional leader of the squad, and he's really good. I mean, he's not just there to be a cheerleader.
Yeah.
He's really, really good. He's a tone setter. He's a captain. He's a leader. And I saw that he's been playing in Major League Soccer since 2015. So he's been through San Jose, he's been through Nashville, and now he's in San Diego. And he became a citizen that he posted on Instagram last week. And I'm like, wow. Every once in a while, you and I think strike a little bit of a tone, like, oh man, this is a tough place to be sometimes. This place will wear you out. Living here in the U.S. and what does it take to be a citizen in Italy anyway? What is citizenship by descent? Like you and I have talked about that a little bit on Bandwagon Beach, on the podcast known as Bandwagon Beach, and also a little bit privately. And I will say it's something that I've contemplated for a really, really long time. Like, at some point in my life, I would like to know what it's like to live in another country. But, that predates Donald Trump. That's just something that I personally have always said. If I can make that happen, I would like to make that happen. Maybe there's a little bit of an accelerant based on the tone of the country. But, then it sort of stops you in your tracks, that you see somebody who's Panamanian by birth and through 35 years of his life, and how proud he is to be a U.S. citizen, and it's a perspective, I think, that sometimes some of us we just overlook, that there's a lot of people who don't take it. I don't want to say take it for granted. That's probably not the right phrase, but there's people that are working really, really hard to provide this pathway for themselves, while many of us flippantly just talk about, maybe time to get the hell out of this place.
Yeah, it's funny. About an hour ago, I was walking my dog around my neighborhood, and one of my neighbors hung an American flag outside of his house. And I remember I just looked at it, and I was like, is he hanging the American flag outside of his house because he's, real happy with what the country's doing right now? Is he a Trump supporter? Is he going, yeah, America first, blah, blah, blah? Or is this his symbol, his signal that, we still believe in the things that started this nation, what the forefathers were trying to build? We still have hope that we'll return to that. And there's no way for me to know, but it's interesting to say, like, there's you can look at this from a lot of different perspectives, right? And a few weeks ago I don't know if you watch Last Week Tonight with John, whose name I'm going to forget.
John Oliver.
John Oliver. And John Oliver's British. And a few weeks ago, he was talking about, the Venezuelan people that were getting deported and put into a prison. And he talked about his own journey as coming over on a visa and then getting a green card and then eventually getting citizenship. And he actually explained it in a really interesting way that mostly was just like fear before, but is reality now, which was, he was like, the moment I became a citizen was the moment that I could let go of a lot of my stress and my anxiety about just getting kicked out of the country, having them take this from me and going, get the hell out of here. And he's like, that was a really proud moment for me because I slept better at night knowing that I have the rights of all of the citizens around me. And I mean, I guess until they start taking actual American citizens and throwing us in gulags somewhere, that still, has some protection behind it. And that still has some hope in it. And, we saw it over the weekend. We didn't even talk about it yesterday. 1,300 protests across the country of people that still believe that there's something here that can be saved. And if we try hard enough and we get together, we can save it. So yeah, look, I'm not gonna shit on Anibal Godoy, and it's a good reminder that sometimes we, it's like, you got to work on a marriage. Sometimes you got to remember that your citizenship is not just a thing to bitch and complain about. It should be a point of pride and a thing that you hold dear. And for guys like Anibal Godoy, who it's brand new to him and he's worked really hard and really long to get here, it's probably easier to live that experience.
Yeah, he wrote on Instagram, "I'm officially an American citizen. Thank you, United States, for opening the doors of this beautiful country to me and my family, especially the San Jose Earthquakes, Nashville SC, San Diego FC, who have played an important role in the development of my life and that of my family here in the U.S." And again, it's just a perspective I think that's kind of hard for us to truly understand. And I think when you're internally trying to think like, well, what am I going to ask him about this? Somebody, I'm sure somebody would be like if I were to post this, let's say on X and be like, hey, I'm interviewing Anibal Godoy today about becoming a citizen. And that's not going to be like the whole interview. Yeah. I'm sure it wouldn't take long for somebody to be like, ask him why, like, why would you want, but like, that's not, it clearly is. You can see the look on his face on the picture and how happy and proud he is to have gone through this process. And I think it's so great. I think it is heartwarming, to your point. I do think that people confuse protests sometimes. Listen, there are bad faith protesters. We all understand it.
For sure.
But, the way protesting, I think, is often misinterpreted as these people don't like the country or they hate, this. And instead it's like, no, like what we're saying is it should be better than this. That's really, I think, the message behind a lot of the protesting is not that, we want destruction or whatever, or however it gets spun and twisted and turned. We just think there's a better version of this. We just feel like there's a better version of this out there. And, that we should figure out a way to make this better. I mean, I've always taken these protests to mean something along those lines. Like we're not, it's not that we want the complete destruction, unraveling. We just think there's a better way. We just feel like there's a better way of doing this. And that's what we're out here saying en masse. And I think that's a pretty powerful message.
Yeah. So not to get off track, I promise this is going to be a very, very quick aside, but the Supreme Court made like a decision yesterday about, these non-citizens and being deported, and saying, they deserve due process. They deserve a chance to talk to a judge in front of a court and all that stuff. And the people who, it's complicated as to what they were, on the Supreme Court, what they were voting for and against. But basically, it was a 5-4 motion that said, like, yes, they can continue to deport these people. They just have to give them due process. And people were mad about the part where the Supreme Court said they can continue to deport these immigrants, and that's fine. I'm mad too. And it was a 5-4, and the 5 were the men on the Supreme Court, and the 4 were the women. And Amy Coney Barrett is someone who, when she got nominated to the Supreme Court and then got put on the Supreme Court, I was mad because I was like, her history, and she's very religious and conservative and all this stuff. And she has more often than not voted with the women, who are also the liberals. There's essentially like 3 liberals on the Supreme Court. And there's Amy Coney Barrett, who often votes with them. The reason I bring all this up is she wrote as part of the opinion, and she only joined the dissenting part in part, but the last line she said when voting kind of against this thing was she said, "I'm discouraged by all this because I thought as a country we were better than this." And that's like, even from someone that I disagree with most of the time, and this is kind of what you were saying, just that belief that like we can all together, and I'm hopeful that we're getting to this point, we can all together look at the things that the administration is doing, crashing the economy, sending people to gulags in other countries without due process, and say, no, we want to live in a better country than that. And just that belief that like we all together are not going to accept this and we want something better than this is, you know, kind of what made people leave Britain and come over here and start a new country to begin with. So it's hopeful, and it's a good place to live, as opposed to just thinking about all the terrible things that could happen and worrying yourself to death, I suppose. Although
you don't think there's due process, John, in looking at somebody with a Real Madrid tattoo and saying that person's probably part of a gang?
We were talking about this via text message yesterday. Like, they were like, hey, this guy has a crown tattoo and he's part of a Venezuelan gang. And I'm like, I have a crown tattoo. You have a crown tattoo. Are we Tren de Aragua? I don't know.
I don't think anybody's going to confuse us with any sort of Venezuelan gang members, but and we'll move on after this. Tattoos, and this was CBS. Tattoo social media were used to link Venezuelan migrant Herce Reyes Barrios to the Tren de Aragua gang. Immigration agents flagged a crown tattoo as a gang symbol, but they did not mention that the crown is above a soccer ball. This person, Reyes Barrios, is a soccer player from Venezuela. His lawyer said the tattoo honors his favorite team, Real Madrid, whose logo includes a crown. Organizers say that while members of the Salvadoran MS-13 gang can often be identified by signature tattoos, Tren de Aragua is different, and this is not a necessarily effective way of identifying people who are part of that gang. So, I mean, Real Madrid's playing a little later on today, and I won't make a joke about covering up your tattoos other than to say this is sort of happening and playing out in real time.
I was going to say, there's a part of me that wants to be like, man, too bad he doesn't root for a different team. And I'm like, no, it's not. It's not a time for jokes. It's a time for terror. And like,
right. That's on the Barcelona group chat. No, that we're not even, we don't go there.
Yeah. You gotta, I mean, he's still a human being, right? Actually, this brings me to a question I've been meaning to ask you. Is your wife concerned about your safety at all? Like, my wife, and my wife is someone who worries a lot, but she's like, you are out there in the public, often criticizing Trump, whether it's on social media or on these podcasts, and you have tattoos. And like, yes, I'm an American citizen. I'm white. It's hard to say that's a Venezuelan gang member. But like, you know, it's the, hey, first they came for the, you know, the gay people and I wasn't gay, so I didn't worry about it. And then they came for the Jews and I wasn't Jewish, so I didn't worry about it. Like, eventually, if they get to a point that they're just like, hey, we can come scoop you up because you got tattoos and you've been critical of Trump. Is that a thing that
No.
you or your wife is worried about?
No.
My wife is, and I'm not. But I didn't know if that was, especially when we started having conversations about our crown tattoos. I was like, I wonder if your wife's worried about this too.
No, not really. I don't think she concerns herself with that. I don't think I concern myself with that.
Smart.
I'm not to that point. I understand the logic. I understand, that saying. I do understand it. But I do think that this is this goes back to where we started. Where I still choose to be on the as bleak as it might feel and as dire as it might feel at times. I choose to be on the optimistic side. I choose to be on the Anibal Godoy side of things, which is I still do believe that this sort of stuff, that there is more power on that than there is in sitting around and fretting about the Insurrection Act of 1907 or 1807.
1807.
John sent me this story this morning. He's like, do you want to talk about this? I was like, John, it's 8:00 in the morning. You're sending me the Insurrection Act of 1807. I'm sorry. I haven't even had a cup of coffee yet. I think I might need to talk a little bit about the Padres or the national championship game before I get into the Insurrection Act of 1807. But I appreciate that this is what you're doing in the mornings.
Yeah. Well, and especially because this is how I bumped into that. Really, is that my floors, which were replaced apparently in the wrong way 2 years ago, are now getting ripped up and re-replaced. So if you hear anything behind me, That's what's going on. I think they're literally sanding concrete down there. I'm going to try and get it out with all my audio production skills, but some of it might squeeze through. But as a result, I didn't get to sleep in my bed in my bedroom last night. I had to sleep in my guest bed, which is smaller, in a room that was smaller. And I didn't sleep great. So I woke up at like 5 a.m. and I scrolled Blue Sky. And then I was like, oh, this Insurrection Act thing.
I can always tell when you've been scrolling on the Blue Sky.
I know.
I can always tell because I just start getting stories about the Insurrection Act, and I get other stories about detention centers. Yeah, good times in home ownership. Just yesterday, we live across the street from some sort of condominium building. And yesterday in the middle of the afternoon, they started putting up the termite tents over the entire building.
Oh, no.
There has to be, 100 plus units. And everybody, I guess, had to get out. Now, I don't know if this is something that was scheduled.
Didn't you find a termite in your house?
It was
while I
not
on
a
the phone with
termite.
you? Okay,
It was not
right.
a termite. I did call our friend Albert from Western Exterminators and did say, hey, should I be concerned about this? He said, nah, this is something that just happens after some rain.
Oh.
Don't worry about it. And thankfully, we've only seen one other one of those insects around the house. But across the street in this entire building, it's 2 stories tall. It's right on the corner of Seacoast and IB Boulevard. They have tented the entire complex for termite spraying and fumigating, or maybe it's I don't know, a Breaking Bad kind of episode where they're cooking meth in there. I don't know, but the entire building is completely tented, and you think, well, that's good. Yeah, maybe they're taking care of the termites. But my understanding is, living this close to the beach, the termites love living by the beach, apparently. Sure. And whenever you see a tenting, it's always a concern that the termites are just going to leave the tented structure and they're going to relocate to a nearby structure so that this is right across the street from us. Not only does it present an eyesore, and it's incredibly inconvenient for the people that we know who live in the building, but now we have to worry about, well, where are these termites going to go if they're not killed, right? Like, where are they going to go? Where are they going to relocate to? We are 100 yards across the street. This home ownership stuff, John, it's definitely got a lot of upside, but it's definitely got a lot of downside.
I love that. I'm like, hey, here's an article about $45 billion to detention centers from the New York Times and the Insurrection Act from Newsweek. No, let's talk about tenting and termites. So much more important. But that's home ownership, right? Like this it fucks up your own priorities, right? It's like, it's a whole thing. Home
You're just never
sucks.
done in home ownership. That's the thing. It's
never.
It is literally the story of the guy who is constantly painting the Golden Gate Bridge, right? We've all heard that same story. There's a guy, and all he does is he paints the Golden Gate Bridge. I don't even know if this is a true story, but he starts on one side, and by the time he gets done to the other side, and by the time he does the other side,
he's got to turn around.
He got to turn around. He got to do it all over again. It is. I just looked outside today. I was like, well, I got to paint these railings. Because, the paint's starting to come up and it gets kind of moist. It gets a little wet by the beach. And now all of a sudden I have to worry about the wood. And then if the wood isn't painted over, then what about the termites? And I got pavers outside and a bird shit on my paver. So now I'm worried that it's going to make a stain because the sun. It's just it just never ends. It just never ends.
It never ends. I actually asked my wife yesterday at one point when we were just kind of looking around at the destruction of the day once all the contractors left the house, and I just looked at her. I was like, "Did you ever see the movie The Money Pit?" And she was like, "No, and I don't want to." I'm like, all right, fair.
Yeah, we had some of that. We had a little bit of that as well. We had to completely redo a deck. Yeah, it's I know the stuff appreciates in value. I do. I understand all of that. All right. And what we're saying is, if you've enjoyed these podcasts, please subscribe.
Please. We need money. Our houses are falling apart.
Yeah, we are launching a project here called Section 1904 for those that might be new to it. And I realize there are people that are constantly launching other projects. I saw Kyle Glazer has launched a local Padre podcast called, what is it called? Not Talking Friars. I was on Talking Friars last week with Ben, who I like. I think Ben's a good, smart kid.
Well, I'll give you
He's
second
a hustler.
because
He takes a lot of shit. But there's Padres Hot Tub out there. Kyle Glazer's is...
There's also our buddy Steve from Emo Brown launched Somos Padres.
Okay.
So he's got, I think they're a couple episodes in.
Yeah, Kyle Glazer I saw had Ben Sheets on the other day, so that's a good guest. It's Kyle Glazer and Mike Cameron. It's what's the Ken Rosenthal one that's out every day?
He does a podcast?
You don't know this? I thought you were Lord Podcast.
I am. Is this the Kyle Glaser one? Behind the Plate?
No. It's definitely something Friars.
Padres Insider. Friar Territory.
Friar Territory, right. Foul Territory, Fair Territory, Friar Territory.
Sure.
So, then there's Darnay Tripp, and he's got...
On Friar?
On Friar. There's a lot of Padres podcasts out there.
I think AC's still doing the Hot Lava podcast.
Okay.
Which, that name has not aged well.
Mm-hmm. So thank you to Wade. Thank you to Joseph. Thank you to Jerry. I've got a bunch of people who have subscribed. But yes, what we are trying to do is launch a subscription-based podcast that'll be available. We're still working some of the details through here, 3, 4, maybe 5 times per week. Specialty shows. We're going to start getting a little bit more into the production side of things, interviews, things along those lines as well. So, again, we're going to see if this is a system that could work in San Diego. We don't know that it's ever been truly done in this kind of capacity, but if you don't know or if you're new to it, go to section1904.com and it'll explain it in great detail what it is that you could expect from us here on the podcast, which is sort of going to be the backbone of the whole media company. The idea that we have. I was asked this question. Do you know Ben Fadden at all? He does the Talking Friars podcast. He asked, what is your goal with this? What are you trying to do? And we said, well, what we're trying to do is present a legitimate alternative, not just for audio content on a 1 hour per day basis, but also offer in a changing media landscape. I've heard some things about, maybe different companies are starting to scale back their coverage of local sports.
Yep.
Right? Companies that are headquartered in other places. I'll just leave it at that. I won't go too far into the details. But, maybe you're going to get a little bit less coverage, a little less Padre-specific coverage from certain outlets. So just something to tuck away. So, that's a decision that's made because it's made by people that are outside of the market. So we're people that are inside of the market, and we think that there's an audience to be satisfied. So we're going to try to satisfy it as best as we can.
And I got a review yesterday. A buddy of mine called me up, and he said in the middle of the day yesterday, he saw that he got the notification that Section 1904 was on his phone and Spotify or whatever, and he was like, "Oh, I'll listen to that later." And he's like, "I got in the car, and my car was set to I won't say which radio station, but one of the 2 sports stations in town." And he said for 5 or 6 minutes, the guy who was on the air was talking about, what do you call the A's? Do you call them the Oakland A's? Do you call them the Sacramento A's? Do you just call them the A's? Do you need to call them the Athletics? He's like, this guy went on for 5 or 6 minutes just on that. And he was like, and I was sitting there going like, I came for Padres talk. I came for San Diego FC talk. I don't care what you call the A's. Just move on and give me some sort of analysis. And he's like, and that's when I was like, oh, that's right. I have a Section 1904 episode. And he's like, I put it on. You guys gave me exactly what I wanted. Thank you so much. And to him, I said, that guy probably has to fill 3 hours of content every day, if not more. And so it's not all going to be the best. Some of it's going to be scraping the bottom of the barrel. I was like, luckily for us, we don't have to fill 3 hours. We just do good stuff for as long as it's good and get out before we're scraping the bottom of the barrel.
Yeah, I mean, I think the answer is, and you're right, I do think some of that is, you from doing radio for 20 years, I will tell you there's definitely, you definitely will look at the clock.
Yeah.
Because everything is formatted now and everybody takes breaks at specific times.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're at 15 and you got to go to 21,
and
you're like, you're running out of gas on a subject here. You're like, man. And you have a guest lined up in the next segment and it's not now. There is a lot of, you are trying to play the clock in certain situations in radio. So I don't know. I've probably gotten lost on weirder tangents than that. So I'm going to knock whomever it was that was doing it.
You were filling 3 hours.
Yeah. I don't know. What really stuck, what stood out to me a little bit last night, on the Padres win, 5-4, as mentioned. We mentioned 9,502 in the building last night at Sutter Health Park. Sutter? I don't know.
Suter? I went with Suter just because baseball.
Yeah. I don't know. I don't know the answer.
Me neither.
But 9,502, they have, let's see, here are their home games. Their home opener was March 31st against the Cubs.
Yep.
12,119. That is what is considered a sellout.
Sure. At
Suter or Sutter. Is it 2 T's or 1 T?
I think it's 2.
Well, then wouldn't it be Sutter?
I think so.
12,119. Their second game ever, they got 10,095. Their third game, they had their lowest attendance of the year, 9,342. Last night, as you mentioned, Michael King picking up his second win of the season, 9,502. All right, so my point isn't to just rattle off attendance numbers, but to say that you have a Major League Baseball team that is playing in a AAA park.
Yeah.
But they are not the only team that is playing in a minor league facility.
And I don't know that.
Yeah, I don't know that Steinbrenner Field, is that a minor league park or is that just a spring training facility? I'm not quite clear on that.
I believe it is just a spring training facility.
Okay, so the Tampa Bay Rays, due to circumstances where a hurricane went ripping through Tampa and completely tore the roof off of their building, they are playing this entire season at least at Steinbrenner Field, which is the New York Yankees facility. Their attendance has been pretty consistent, 10,046 each game. That is a sellout there. They played their first 6 games at home. Colorado Rockies and the Pittsburgh Pirates, by the way. Now, they did get Skeens one of those days. But 10,046, they've been sold out 6 straight games. Now, if you're in San Diego and you get 40,000 plus in the building every night and you're setting attendance record after attendance record, you know, this is a conversation that might be a bit foreign. Although it really wasn't that long ago that the Padres were pulling in similar numbers.
Right. That's what I was going to point out.
But 2 of the 30 teams, I don't know why, and I don't really know what the point of it is, but 2 of the 30 teams, John, in Major League Baseball right now are playing in facilities where the attendance is 12,000 or below. 2 of the 30. So, you know, 1 out of 50, you know, not a ton. I don't know. I mean, I don't really know what that says. It's probably just a snapshot in time, and it doesn't say anything other than there was a weather-related event, and, you know, there's a crappy owner in the A's.
Really bad.
But, you know, I mean, it is just kind of an interesting footnote to the start of the 2025 season that these 2 teams are playing in these facilities and seemingly, at least through the first 10, 12 games of the season here, getting much different results. Much different, not results. Just much different interest, you know, based on one team in its facility through its first 6 games. And then the other team, like, where is this going with the A's that you know, in their second or third game, they're struggling to even get 9,000 people into the door? That's crazy.
I mean, to be fair, in both of these instances, you're not close enough that you're bringing in the old fans, right? If someone was going to Oakland A's games, they're not now going to games in Sacramento. That's like an hour away, 2 hours away. It's not particularly close. So now they got to try and convince people in Sacramento who've been going to minor league games to come to the major league games instead, which I'm sure is a higher price point and a whole different thing. And there's not even a promise of like, hey, if you support this team really well, maybe we'll stay. Like it's we're here for a year and then we're gone, or maybe 2. And same with Tampa playing in where's Steinbrenner Field is on the east coast of Florida.
No, it's in Tampa. No,
it's
they're in Tampa. They're not far
Oh.
away. I mean, the old stadium was in St. Petersburg, and this one is in Tampa.
Okay, so that's like 20 minutes, half an hour away.
Right.
All right. I kind of was like, Tampa always struggles, and now it's an outdoor park, and who knows how the summer is going to treat it. Like, there's a reason they usually don't play games there in the summer, I think.
Yeah, both of these places.
Yeah, I mean, we'll see. And they're 2 teams that have struggled with attendance anyway because, you know, they don't really have stars and they don't have top payrolls. And even when the Rays are successful, like, Florida likes watching them on TV, I think, but they don't really go out to support them. So, I don't know. It's interesting. I actually want to talk with our buddy H.J. Preller from the Quintelligence podcast. Maybe I will have him on Section 1904, or maybe I will finally guest on their podcast, which we've been trying to find a schedule that works for everyone for the last like 3 months. But he's actually up there. He flew up to Sacramento, I think yesterday. When's the day game? The day game's probably tomorrow. So I think he's flying up today, going to tonight's game, and then going to tomorrow's game. And I'm interested to get his perspective on just like how, and he also goes to like Elsinore games and stuff. So I'm interested on just his perspective of how does it compare to a major league game? How does it compare to a minor league game? Like, what's the feeling? And I know he was very excited about, you know, having the stadium right in downtown Sacramento where it's easily like walkable from his hotel and all that. So it'll be an interesting It's kind of like when the Chargers were playing at, what's it called now? Dignity Health
Sports Park, right, when it was StubHub. But we remember, too, like we remember people actually from the broadcast booth. I remember Dan Fouts. We all thought that Dan Fouts got himself in a little bit of trouble because he talked about how embarrassing it was that the Chargers were playing in the facility that held 27,000 people. And, I don't, like Major League Baseball approved this. Like Major League Baseball said that this was okay, that it was okay for John Fisher to take the A's out of Oakland and put them in this temporary stadium for a couple of years where they're building whatever they're building in Las Vegas. And he, baseball, said that this was okay to do.
Yeah.
And you just can't help but wonder, what, why? What was that? I understand the Lee stuff going on with Oakland, and nobody
they
really
didn't really have a
wanted
place to play, right?
But even still, this was the alternative. This was the best that they could come up with, was putting this team in a place where seemingly right out of the gate, and there was a philosophy too that maybe this was going to be a little bit of a this was going to be a bit of a not a dress rehearsal, but this would be a little bit of a trial run for Sacramento. That if Sacramento wanted to get involved in MLS or MLB expansion at some point, that they would have to show, that their fans would be interested in such a thing. And already, it's not like there's any demand for this. It's already, there's a very laissez-faire attitude towards the team in the city itself. And you could understand it. I'm not blaming anybody in Sacramento because they're probably like, why? Why would I?
I have a better idea.
But man, that you can't even pull in 10,000 in your second game, or in 10,000, 12,000, what's the fucking difference? But still, the
one
fact
of the sellout.
The fact that they there just seems to be so little demand outside of people going, oh, well, that's a novel thing. Maybe I'll take a Southwest flight up to Sacramento so that I can go and experience this. Because, Sacramento can be a fun little place to go. I don't know if you've ever spent any time there. It's got some vibe to it.
A little bit.
I kind of liked it the time or two that I was there.
It's kind of fun.
The airport is quality.
It's a nice airport. It's a really nice airport.
Very nice airport. I mean, hopefully our Terminal 1 will look like that when construction's complete.
Yeah.
But, I understand that people would say, that's kind of a cool thing. But, man, I just don't, where is this going to go in the middle of the summer? What are you going to be looking at here for a major league product? Man, I just, I don't know what they were thinking here.
I have a question. I have an idea that is centered around a question that you might be able to give me an answer to. It used to be, and the A's were a part of this, it used to be that there were NFL teams and MLB teams that would share a stadium and share a field, right? And literally to the point where an NFL game would be going on and you'd see a guy run past where second base would be. You'd see
Qualcomm
the dirt.
Stadium.
Yeah, Qualcomm Stadium, the stadium in Oakland. I think there was a couple more. I know it's not ideal, but they play football games at Yankee Stadium now, right? Twice a year.
Yeah, and there's an MLS team that plays at Yankee Stadium.
They play basketball games at Petco Park occasionally. Would it have been so bad if the Oakland A's, I'm going to call them the Oakland A's because I just did, the Las Vegas A's played at the Raiders Stadium in Vegas? Why not? Get them introduced to Vegas, get people supporting the team before they even have their stadium. Because the Vegas thing still seems like it's gonna happen. So if it's gonna happen, wouldn't it make sense to play in Vegas as opposed to in Sacramento? I know there was some talk of them playing in the, there's a Vegas minor league ballpark. Mm-hmm. There was talk of them playing there. I just don't understand why they didn't make a deal with the Raiders or the city of Las Vegas and be like, hey, let us, be the second or third tenant in the Raiders, the Allegiant Stadium, I think it is.
Allegiant Stadium. And I'm just looking it up now. It is owned by the Las Vegas Stadium Authority, a public entity created by the Nevada State Legislature, and the Raiders team owned by Mark Davis leases the stadium. Because at first when you said that, I was like, I think that there might be a bit of conflict between Mark Davis and John Fisher. John Fisher? Is that his name? Yeah.
Yes.
So I think that there might be a little bit of conflict there. I think that the A's and the Raiders, I don't think that they got along real well. So If you're the Raiders, you're like, no, we're not doing this. I don't even know that the Raiders really want the A's going there, other than it helps support their case for relocation. Not that NFL fans really care all that much. At least Raider fans care all that much. But are
you saying? Wait. Are you saying that the first time the Las Vegas Athletics play a game in Las Vegas. They're not going to get a tweet from the Las Vegas Raiders.
I would bet against it, John. I would bet against it. Word on the street is those two teams did not get along. Those two owners did not get along.
Brutal.
But maybe that's some bad dope. I'm not sure on that one. So I don't know. And I would imagine also Allegiant Stadium is probably completely booked out for concerts and things like that. And nobody was thinking about baseball, and they're going to get their own baseball park. Now, you did bring up the minor league park where I've been in Vegas, because that's where the Las Vegas Lights have played. And when I was with San Diego Loyal, we would go out there, and that was a great away trip. That's a cool little park in a fun part of town, and it's a place where it's out there by a resort called Red Rock. It is a great little getaway. If you want to go to Vegas and you don't want to go stay on the Strip, or if you don't want to go stay in Old Town, you can go like 20, 30 minutes out. Not Red Rocks, the amphitheater in Denver.
No. My parents who lived in Vegas for like a decade, they lived in Summerlin, which I think is, and I used to walk to the Red Rocks casino from their house. That way I could drink and walk home and not have to worry about driving. So I know exactly where it is. I didn't know that there was a soccer park out there. Or a baseball field.
Cashman Field or Cashman Complex or something like that. And it's a cool little area. They built up around it, and there's fun stuff to do. And I want to say that the Las Vegas Knights, the hockey team, has its training facility out there. So, it's kind of self-sufficient that you can go out there and if you want to go to the Strip, 20 minutes away in Uber. If you don't want to go to the Strip, you could stay out there and you could be fine.
But why not play there?
I don't know. I mean, why not? But baseball, I guess, is the answer to it all. I just think it's kind of, I think this is honestly worse than the Chargers, though. I do. It's
bad. It's real bad. When you have, like you said, two MLB teams playing games in minor league stadiums. Now, granted, the Tampa Bay Rays one probably,
what are you going to do?
Yeah, that's weather related. You can't really predict that. But yeah, I mean, the fact that the A's are playing in a minor league park because they just don't have a new ballpark ready that looks terrible. That looks terrible for baseball. Also, I imagine their old Oakland stadium is just sitting there. It hasn't been torn down yet, has it?
It has not. As a matter of fact, the USL team, the Oakland Roots, played and did they set an attendance record?
What a great name!
They got 25,000 plus people in to watch a USL game there in Oakland. And of course, some of that is, hey, we're going to show them, that if you invest in Oakland, we'll invest in you and all that.
They're playing in a minor league park in Sacramento because John Fisher has burned so many bridges. Yeah. Like, he's not welcome in Oakland. He's not welcome in the Raiders Stadium. Like, a good thing he had a friend in the Sacramento River Cats. But like,
right. All right, a couple things here real quick, because you brought this up, I want to say last week, and I hadn't heard of it, but I did see today, Dennis Lenda, The Athletic, Joe Musgrove threw. He threw in Sacramento, in West Sacramento, as a matter of fact, is the byline. 25 throws, relatively low intensity. Monday will go down as a good day for Joe Musgrove. So you brought this up. I said, I don't know. I thought, I just assume he's out for the entire year. I did talk a little bit about a timeline that could potentially get him back in the middle of October. Musgrove was quoted saying, my goal from the get-go, I still feel like it's somewhat within reach. The doctors are going to tell me no, just because they prefer not to have anybody back in a game. Anything shorter than a year puts me in the middle of October. He had the surgery October 11th last year. Playoff mix. I think starting's out of the question. Opener type role, maybe. Most realistically, it'd be a chance to come out of the bullpen somewhat late in the postseason. But also said he was not going to drive himself crazy not being around the team. So he's with the team. He's throwing on the field in Sacramento. I hadn't heard a peep about this. I just had written off the entire season, but Joe Musgrove is not. That's the difference between Joe Musgrove and me. So I think that's kind of good news. Kind of cool.
I told you that I thought that he's the kind of psychotic person that's like, I know they say a year, but I'm just going to work as hard as possible and see if I can beat that. We used to attach this to Adrian Peterson, who I think came back from a torn ACL in less than a year or something. They brought it up on the broadcast yesterday. Scanlon talked about it, and there was some interesting points from Scanlon about it. One was he said that Musgrove would be throwing with a weighted ball, which I thought was really interesting. The other one was he said Nick Pivetta had basically begged Musgrove to let him be the guy who plays catch with Musgrove the first time. Like, please let me. And they even said, like, and this is the plan. His first catch is going to be with Nick Pivetta, who has basically said, like, I want to be the guy playing catch with Musgrove. I don't understand it. but it's something to keep an eye on.
Huh.
And then Scanlon said that Musgrove was basically like every series, he was scouting all of the hitters and doing his full write-up as if he was going to start against them. And they were like, he's not just doing it to, because he's bored. He said he was doing it because he didn't want, when it was time for him to pitch again, he didn't want all of the stuff in his head about each hitter to be a year old because stuff changes so quickly. And I thought that was really interesting. But yeah, I'm not going to be shocked if, come September, they're like, Musgrove's a couple weeks away. Is he going to be on the playoff roster or not? Like, I'm not going to be shocked.
The other thing is Jackson Merrill was given the day off, and a little bit of a hamstring grab was cited as the reason why. I think it was Mike Schilt who said something to the effect of, we're just trying to get ahead of it. Nothing too serious. Don't know. It is Tuesday morning. Have no idea if he's going to be back in the lineup. I didn't see any messaging to that effect whatsoever. I don't know if Kevin Acee had that in his Padres Daily or not. But, it just kind of speaks to what it was that we were discussing yesterday. Yeah, like we get it. The games in April count. Like they do. They matter.
Yeah.
We all understand it. But, if you think this would happen in September while you're chasing a playoff spot, yeah, I'm going to guess it probably would not. Not that I have any idea what the severity of the injury is, but it certainly seemed like it was precautionary, John. That's the way I interpreted it. That's the way I read it. We all know that the Padres will say one thing and then something completely different will happen, right? So they're like, oh, yeah, we're just trying to get ahead of it. All of a sudden, I think players end up on the injured list.
Yeah.
I don't think that's going to be the case here, at least not that I've seen, that there's any concern. Credit to Ben Higgins, who had an image of Jackson Merrill in Chicago, going first to third on a play and sliding into third and grabbing at the right hamstring, at the back of the right hamstring. I don't know that was something that people noticed in real time, but I saw that Ben put that on X last night. So I hadn't noticed that. I didn't see anybody else bring attention to it. But in hindsight, it seemingly has been identified as the moment where maybe the hamstring grabbed just a little bit, but it feels very precautionary unless you feel otherwise. And again, I think this is what we were saying yesterday. Your lineup construction is different in April. Managing the games is different in April. We talked about taking players out of games. So much for the never say die pod. Things are they're just different. So, we don't need any further evidence that things are going to be treated differently in April than they are going to be in September when you're in a playoff chase. But hopefully this is nothing too concerning, or are you concerned?
I am not concerned. I think my concern-o-meter would kick in if he doesn't play today, tomorrow, or Friday. That's when I would start worrying. But my guess is that he will play either today or tomorrow because he wants to. He's young. He'll heal quick. I also think there's a part of watching Tatis and Rooker hit those bombs last night and going like, oh, this is a fun place to hit. Like, get me in the lineup. Like, there's like an outside chance that he's in the lineup today as like a DH or something. Mm-hmm. And I don't think he's going to want to miss the chance to hit in Colorado. So like, if the hamstring, maybe grabbed a little bit the other day, yeah, give me a day off, sure. But he's going to show up today and go, hey, Skip, my hamstring feels fantastic. Put me in that lineup and let me hit at that tiny little minor league ballpark.
I would think so as well. I will have to see it again. I will say, though, it is funny just to see some of the reaction on social media. That Jackson Merrill's out of the lineup, and all of a sudden this qualifies as an early season crisis before anybody even knew why he was out of the lineup. You have people that are like, I cannot believe these soft baseball players. Oh, man, nobody plays 162 anymore. This is such a soft league, and it's such a soft sport. You're like, can we wait for a little bit of information? We don't know. Maybe something's going on in the guy's personal life. Maybe there's something that we have to talk about, injury related. Maybe you want to say in the beginning of a really, really long season, this is something that you want to do. Just as Mike Schilt said, to get ahead of such a thing. My God, I mean, it just is, everything is treated like it's a crisis. I know, we all want to watch Jackson Merrill play, right? And if you were one of the 9,500 people that paid to go watch a game in a minor league baseball park and you didn't see Jackson Merrill, maybe you walked away a tad bit disappointed because they were exercising just a little bit of caution. But I think playing the long game is probably okay. This is something, I've talked about a little bit out at the SDFC facilities with Chucky Lozano. Sometimes it's not as simple as, can a guy play? Then he plays. Sometimes there are other variables that you factor in. Yeah. What kind of start have you had? How are other players performing? How many more games do you have left in your season? All these things need to be factored in. It's not as simple as, can you play? Oh, you can play. Okay, good. You're in the game.
Yeah.
Again, September, Yeah, probably.
Yeah, I think he plays in September. September in a division race, a pennant race, or even a wild card race is when you start going, can he play? He plays. But yeah, not in April.
He's not in a rotation. I mean, this isn't a rotation. If the guy, is going to be able to play, he's gonna play.
Also, to whoever was saying he's soft because now he's not going to play 162 games, Tony Gwynn Sr. never played 162 games in a year. Never.
Okay.
If a Padres fan wants to call Tony Gwynn Sr. soft, they can have that, and then they can also have my fist in their stomach because I'm going to be pissed off about it. Like, that man was not soft, and neither is Jackson Merrill. Cut off your high. I guarantee you the people calling Jackson Merrill soft are the same people like twist their ankle to stepping off a curb, and they're like, "Oh, I can't. You gotta leave me off the yard work today because my ankle's barking at me."
Yeah. So I mean, and like, I get it. It's a point of pride, Well, there it is. He got his big turn. He's got his big money contract, and he's already taken a day off. I think Jackson Merrill probably wakes up and puts his eye black on.
Actually,
I mean?
it's funny you say the thing about like maybe he's dealing with something off the field or whatever. I think it was last year. Didn't Luis Ariz injure himself in his hotel room? Do you remember that story?
I don't. He ended the season with some sort of thumb situation.
Yeah, I might have this wrong, but I feel like there was a story about he has this whole like swing workout routine he does in the hotel room before he like goes to the game or in his like condo. And I thought there was a story about like he injured himself doing that, and I just remember being like, oh yeah, they can get injured doing other things too, like when Sammy Sosa injured himself sneezing or whatever that was. Like, it's like, yeah, like we get injured sometimes and we're not baseball players. So they're humans. Maybe he injured his hamstring, going up a flight of stairs or something. Like, it's not necessarily in the game. And these people are humans and they deserve a day off every now and then.
I would say so. And it's like the same people that bellyache about not playing 162 are probably the same people that complain about pitchers not going complete. I mean, I worked with Randy Jones forever. Randy Jones had the most ridiculous numbers and numbers that you will never, ever see again. You always talk about unbreakable records in sports. And, Randy Jones complete games will nobody's ever going to have 25 complete games in a season like Randy Jones did in 1976. Yeah. 25 complete games, John. Sometimes, if guys can start 25 times, you're like, wow, that guy's a workhorse.
Wow, he was healthy.
Wow, that guy, man, you can count on him, right? I mean, that guy, you want him in your rotation. 25 starts. Randy Jones had 40 starts in a season, 25 complete games. And you wonder why Randy Jones' career lasted 10 years, but really kind of 8 before the injuries set in. Probably because he threw 315 innings in a single season with 25 complete games. So, we all can, and I know there's other players that had longer careers, and you can look at Nolan Ryan and all these other old dudes. You can say whatever you want, but I do think that the sports science is pretty impactful and pretty important. All right. Before we go, last thing, because you and I are both hoop heads. We love college basketball or basketball, I should say.
Basketball, yeah.
Man, I was what a tough way to lose a basketball game last night. I mean, that was just such a tough way. And I say it that way, not that Florida didn't have the lead, because Florida had the lead. They were winning. They had only led, I think, if I heard Ian Eagle on the broadcast. And I guess I had forgotten that Ian Eagle is doing these games and not Nance. But I think this is like the third year of that. But it was a reminder last night that Ian Eagle is the A team with Grant Hill and Bill Raftery. Onions. But they had made a point when Florida took the lead in the 39th minute of the – I'm talking soccer here. But when they took a lead late with about a minute plus to go, that they had only led for 17 seconds in the game up until that point. I didn't watch any of the first half. I kind of caught this in the second half. And that Florida took a lead, and it's like a total smash and grab, another soccer term, total smash and grab kind of situation here. And, 65-63 is the final score. But, man, like Houston had an 11-point lead, I think a 12-point lead at one point. They had a shot, and they've hit dramatic shots. This player, Emmanuel Sharp, has hit dramatic shots for them down the stretch. They had this incredible come-from-behind victory against Duke on Saturday night that we touched on a little bit yesterday. But more Houston heartbreak that they can't get that shot off at the end of the game. And that ball just bouncing there for a couple of seconds was agonizing to watch. And I'm totally impartial. I didn't fill out a bracket. I didn't bet it. I didn't go to Houston. I just kind of said I like Kelvin Sampson, and I feel like it's his time. after all these years of coaching, and this Florida coach has never been in this situation, and he's kind of a little bit of a putz. But man, I just was like, God, what an agonizing way to lose a national championship game.
Yeah, so it gets worse than that. So I think the previous time they had the lead, the Gators were up like 8-7. That should tell you how early it was in the game, and then they took the lead with about like a minute 10 left at the end. I can explain to you exactly what happened in this game. Exactly what happened in this game. The offense of both teams was pretty garbage. I mean, pretty much the entire game. Houston had one player in double figures. One. He had 19 points. LJ Cryer, who's not usually, I think, one of their best players, one of their top scorers. Tugler only played 16 minutes. He's one of their best players. He kind of was the guy who rallied against Duke at the end there. He played 16 minutes because he fouled out. Juwan Roberts, who's really good, had 8 points on 13 shots. But Florida was just as bad. Like, there was a point close to halftime where Florida had one guy who had made a field goal. One. Everyone else they had guys who had made free throws, but only one guy who had made field goals, and that was Will. They were saying Richard, but I think it's Richard.
At halftime, only one player had made a field goal.
It was before. It was like 4 minutes before halftime.
Okay.
They or maybe it was going into halftime. At some point, they interviewed him. I think it was coming out of like a timeout. They interviewed the player, and they were like, "Isn't it weird that like you're carrying the whole team?" And they had the stat up of like these are his stats, and here's everyone else. And it was like he was like 5 for 5, and the rest of the team was like 0 for like 18 from the field. So defense, right? And the offenses were just dead on arrival. And then, and this is a thing you never see in the NBA because it's legally against the NBA rules. It can only exist in college basketball. Houston went into the bonus with 15 minutes left. Like, if you understand basketball at all, they were up 12 points, and everyone that I was following on Blue Sky was like, well, game over. Like, you can't go into the bonus with 15 minutes left. You're just going to give up free throws after free throws after free throws after free throws, which are much easier to score on than actual field goals, and that's what Florida was not struggling with, which was making their free throws, and that's why Florida clawed their way back and clawed their way back and clawed their way back and got it to the point where, you know, in the last 30, 40 seconds, it was pretty much a tie game. And then that play at the end where the guy went up for the shot thinking, I'm going to get this off real quick. The defender was a step ahead of him. There was a hand in his face. He couldn't get it off. He kind of threw the ball down to the ground, hoping one of his teammates would grab it. There was no teammates around, and it just kind of bounced there while the clock ran out. And it was frustrating. It was agonizing if you were rooting for Houston or just rooting for, you know, a classic end of the game that didn't seem like a cluster. But the reason all of it happened was Houston went into the bonus with 15 minutes left. I don't know how you win a game like that.
Yeah, I mean, the ball just like taunted them in that spot. When the player's name is Emmanuel Sharp, he goes up for the shot, and he realizes the defender has closed in way quicker than he had anticipated when he leaves his feet. And that's a credit to Florida. You know, I know it's unsatisfying, and it sounds like we're saying it's unsatisfying because
great defense.
But it is a credit to the defense.
Great defense.
And the player then, you know, a lot of people were confused. They're like, well, why didn't he pick it up? You know, because that's a travel.
Yeah.
You know, it's not a double dribble, it's a
down.
travel. And he did the best he could to try to shield one of the defenders. He tried to screen the defender out of the way.
Boxing out.
And the ball, I was
boxing
watching this morning, it bounces 4 times on the ground. And it felt like an hour. It felt like that moment was in slow motion. I can't imagine that player, like what that's going to be like, just looking at that basketball through his eyes, seeing it bounce on the court 4 times before one of the Florida players dives in and knocks it down, and the clock runs out and the confetti drops, and you know everybody's celebrating and heartbroken. I mean, it was such a like thrill of victory, agony of defeat, like true agony of defeat moment in sports. And it was different. I don't know that I wouldn't say that this was a Chris Webber type moment where Chris Webber calls a timeout with the Fab Five that they didn't have, and Michigan has the technical foul. That's a mental mistake. This really wasn't a mental mistake. It appeared that way because it was kind of goofy and not a play.
He made a
that
smart
you see
play.
end up any basketball game, but certainly not a championship game. It is a little bit of it is a lot of credit to Florida, like you said, and the circumstances, but the moment. Like that moment, man, that is as tough a way to lose a basketball game. I mean, I don't know that I should say that because it was Houston that lost to, I think Ernie Johnson brought it up. that this is the Florida coach is the youngest coach since Jim Valvano to win a national championship.
Oh, jeez.
But remember, it was Jim Valvano at NC State. That was against Houston.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I mean, that was in 1983 now. So this is a million years ago. It's ancient history for people that listen to
Hakeem
podcasts.
was there last night.
Yeah, and well, that's twice then. Because, that moment, where Jim Valvano's running around the pit in New Mexico looking for somebody to hug, that was also against Houston. And that was heartbreaking. They had a lead, and it was a long shot that came up well short and put back in for the dunk. And that's a brutal way to lose a basketball game. I mean, it wasn't a mental thing. It just was like, oh, man, this guy's like Florida really, they defended well. And it just looked, it was visually, I mean, how many people sort of yelled out at their television in real time? I did. I was like, oh my God, he's going to,
And I knew exactly what he was doing, but that is on a basketball court, not a thing that happens really ever. So I'm sure it took his teammates a second to understand what he even just did. But there was two options there. There was that option of he throws the ball on the ground and hopes that there's someone nearby to grab it and throw it back towards the hoop, or he gets blocked. And maybe the more satisfying ending for us viewers is the dramatic block. Ball goes the other way, and it's like, wow, that Florida defense really won the game for him. Instead of the agonizing, he throws the ball down. It's like, where's his teammates? No one knows what he's doing. He made the smart play. He should get rewarded. But is what it is. That's how the ball bounces.
You want me to end on a quick note here, John? Because I think you'll want to know this, and I'll just get your real reaction.
Yeah.
Denver Nuggets have fired Michael Malone.
I don't know what's going on in the NBA. They're also going into the playoffs, aren't they?
I think so. I mean, he's an NBA.
The Nuggets are in fourth place. They're going to play a
He's
home
an NBA
series.
championship coach.
2 years ago. Look, Michael Malone also got fired from the Kings while he was the best coach they ever had at the time. And everyone was like, what is going on here? And it just seems like Michael Malone, who never call him Mike Malone, he will yell at you, seems to be a bit of a difficult personality and a grump to work with. But
what is this with I mean, a week to go in the season?
But there's a week to go in the season. At that point, I said to people that I was going to come back around on the Taylor Jenkins thing and try and explain that. And I reached out to my sources, and I got all sorts of sources, and I got all different perspectives. And basically, what it boiled down to was he lost the locker room. And there was an assistant coach that the owner, the GM, really, really liked, and they wanted to give that assistant coach a chance. And so they're just like, here, you have some runway, you have a playoff series, you win that playoff series, you can be our head coach. It's like an audition, right? But the Nuggets won the championship 2 years ago with basically this same team and this same coaching staff, and it's insane to fire your head coach a week before the season?
Oh, yeah.
Or a week before the playoffs?
Now, they've lost 4 straight, which, again, it feels like a little bit of a footnote.
Maybe he lost the team? I don't know.
I mean, you've got a 3-time MVP on your squad. I don't know. I don't know what to say.
They just signed.
If you can fire that guy at this point of the season, then who can't you fire?
Mark Daigneault, maybe? I don't know. At this point, I don't know who couldn't get fired. Maybe the Cavs coach in his first year.
The Denver Nuggets are firing an NBA championship coach who's sitting in that is...
With the same team that won the championship 2 years ago. The same team that they're like, we can't break this team up, so we'll sign Jamal Murray to a big deal.
Teams are not going to want to be playing. It's not going to be a reward for a 1 seed to have to see the Nuggets sitting there.
No, but...
Well,
I don't know. That's brutal. That's brutal. I didn't see that come in. Thank you for the heads up on that.
Literally just happened.
I don't know what the fuck is going on in the NBA, man.
All right. Well, I'm gonna go talk to Anibal Godoy and Milan Olaski. So look for that. That'll be Wednesday. So I'll have plenty of time to tell you how that went.
Yep.
Thank you, everybody. Again, check it out, 1904.com, and you can see what it is that John and I are trying to do here in the market, and we'll have another one. We plan to have another one tomorrow. And
maybe with a guest.
I think we're going to be out and about and head into Mason Aleworks in Barrio Logan. Yeah. So I know we got a couple of people who are trying to make part of the program, so we'll fill you in on the details as we move on. But enjoy the rest of your Tuesday, and we'll do it again Wednesday.